Hey, this video is called My Favorite Paintings, and let's be completely honest for a second, I have absolutely no idea why you should care about what some random dude on the internet likes. But the world is actively going to hell, the economy is a joke, and we are about to waste your precious time. Time you could be investing in a healthy depression or a mindless TikTok scrolling or discussing 100-year-old canvases, on the other hand. So, if you are traumatized by existing as I am and you get your emotional catharsis not from alcohol or proper therapy, but from consuming deeply unsettling art, well, welcome to the club. Maybe today you'll discover a few new masterpieces that will serve as the perfect backdrop for your next existential crisis. So, here we begin our journey on the very edge between life and death. This is Souls on the Acheron by the Austrian symbolist Adolf Hirémy-Hirschl, created in 1898. The artist plunges us straight into a haunting Greek myth. Acheron literally translates to the river of woe. Standing right at the center, wrapped in the deep blue cloak, is Hermes, the guide of the underworld. Ooh. Around him swirls a literal ocean of human despair. The pale, almost translucent souls of the dead beg him for salvation, but Hermes remains cold and immovable. Look closely at the background, hidden in the thick, heavy mist. Charon's boat is awaiting. The composition is so densely packed with muscular, agonizing bodies that the art historians frequently compare it to Michelangelo's The Last Judgment. Hirémy-Hirschl was completely obsessed with anatomy, meticulously rendering every single muscle, even of the figures fading into the shadows. There's no single hero here. It's the crowd itself and its collective dread of the unknown is the main character here. The artist deliberately stripped away all vibrant colors, leaving only cold phosphorescent hues. The painting perfectly mirrored the fin du siècle era, Europe's deep anxiety before facing the unknown 20th century. You can witness this monumental thriller in person in Vienna at the Belvedere Gallery. And you know what's the real tragedy here? This painting reflects Hirémy-Hirschl's own personal heartbreak. At the end of the 19th century, Gustave Klimt's modernism exploded in Vienna, so Hirémy-Hirschl's conservative academic style was instantly deemed outdated, and the art establishment basically erased him. So, these neglected souls begging for recognition on the shores of oblivion, that's a metaphor for the artist himself unfairly pushed into the shadows. From a mythical underworld, we move to a real yet terrifying display of nature's wrath. Ivan Aivazovsky, the ninth wave, painted in 1850, is widely considered the absolute pinnacle of marine art worldwide. The title refers an old maritime superstition that during the storm, the ninth wave is always the largest, most destructive, and fatal. We see a small group of shipwrecked survivors completely exhausted after a brutal night, clinging to a broken mast. Aivazovsky constructs an incredible coloristic battle. A massive, almost transparent wall of water is crashing down on these fragile humans, yet the painting doesn't feel entirely hopeless. The artist masterfully pierces the stormy clouds with the very first rays of the morning sun, so the water lights up with millions of emerald, golden, and pink tones, and the sun here isn't just a light source. It serves as a powerful symbol of hope, survival, and life conquering the cataclysm. The dynamics of the sea are rendered so realistically that you can almost feel the motion of the waves and the salty mist on your face. So, this magnificent manifesto of human resilience is housed today at the State Russian Museum. The mind-blowing secret behind this masterpiece is that Aivazovsky never painted the sea from nature. He believed it was impossible because the water changes every millisecond. So he painted strictly in his studio from memory, and he knew exactly what he was doing. 6 years prior, he barely survived a horrific storm in the Bay of Biscay, to the point where newspapers actually reported him dead. So That absolute terror and that blinding sun, he lived it. Our next canvas takes us out of the wild ocean and straight into the cozy yet incredibly scandalous world of French realism. This is Le Sommeil, or Sleep, by Gustave Courbet, painted in 1866. Courbet was a total art revolutionary. He flat out refused to paint idealized, fictional, mythical goddesses. Instead, he depicted two real naked women sleeping tangled in each other's arms after a night of passion. The painting practically breathes as raw, unvarnished flesh. The texture of their skin isn't airbrushed like academic salons demanded. It's alive, featuring natural folds, shadows, and subtle undertones. Courbet masterfully packs the scene with narrative details. In the foreground, we see a broken pearl necklace scattered across the tangled bed sheets, hinting at the stormy prelude to this peaceful slumber. The warm, heavy color palette creates a thick atmosphere of profound intimacy and midnight silence. Because of the strict censorship of Victorian-era society, this artwork was hidden from the public eye for decades. Today, however, the essential masterpiece of psychological realism is proudly displayed in Paris at the Petit Palais Museum. This painting was the ultimate underground hit of its era. It was secretly commissioned by Khalil Bey, an outrageously wealthy Ottoman diplomat, for his private locked collection of erotica. Courbet charged him a fortune, and Parisian high society absolutely lost its mind in outrage. The police kept this canvas blacklisted for years, viewing it as a threat to public morality. But Courbet didn't care. He showed reality as it is. Now brace yourselves for a fierce, aggressive allegory that hits the viewer right between the eyes. This is Jean-Léon Gérôme's Truth Coming Out of Her Well, or La Vérité, sortant du puits, armed with her whip to chastise mankind, painted in 1896. The artist visually brings to life the famous aphorism by the philosopher Democritus, who claimed that the truth is hidden at the very bottom of the well, brought down there by human falsehoods. Following the strict rules of academic art, Gérôme portrays truth completely naked because the truth has absolutely nothing to hide. It wears no masks. There's no mercy in her eyes. Instead, they burn with pure rage, and her mouth is wide open in a fierce scream. In her hand, she tightly grips a whip, ready to ruthlessly punish humanity for its hypocrisy, fake news, and malice. A harsh, almost theatrical light rips her body out of the dark well, creating an unsettling effect that edges close to a horror movie. This striking image became an iconic social commentary. The truth can be brutal, but it always forces its way into the light. You can see this uncompromising masterpiece in Montauban, France, at the Musée André Bourdelle. And actually, Gérôme didn't just paint this out of nowhere. This was his desperate outcry against the Dreyfus affair, a massive political scandal that was tearing France apart back then. It was an entire conspiracy built on the deep state, forgery, anti-Semitism, and press manipulation. Gérôme wanted to show that you can bury the truth all you want, but when it finally breaks free, it won't smile. It will come to destroy you. So it's pretty relevant for the fake news era, right? We stay with the Jean-Léon Gérôme, but teleport directly into the blood-soaked sand of the Roman Colosseum. This is Pollice Verso, or Thumbs Down, painted in 1872, the definitive masterpiece that permanently shaped how modern Hollywood visualized gladiators and their combat. We're looking at the ultimate moment of truth. A victorious gladiator stands over his defeated foe, waiting for the final verdict. Gérôme geniusly shifts the focus from the act of violence to the terrifying psychology of the crowd. Look at the imperial box and the bleachers, a frenzied mob, including the sacred Vestal virgins, dressed in pristine white, is utterly intoxicated by bloodlust, ruthlessly pointing their thumbs downwards. Sunlight pierces through the massive canvas awnings of the arena, highlighting the cinematic drama of the scene. Gérôme meticulously researched ancient armor and architecture to create an unparalleled sense of historical accuracy. You can almost hear the deafening roar of the stadium. And this hyper-realistic window into ancient Rome's most brutal pastime is currently preserved across the Atlantic, actually in the US at the Phoenix Art Museum in Arizona. This painting looks familiar, it's because it's a literal godfather of the movie Gladiator. Ridley Scott was shown a reproduction of Pollice Verso before filming, and he said the image instantly hooked him on the entire project. But here's an elite historical plot twist. Historians are still arguing whether thumbs down actually meant death back then. Jérôme might have gotten the gesture backwards, but he got the vibes perfectly right. Next up is a visual masterpiece that delivers a profound psychological shock. At first glance, it looks like a lush, dreamlike celebration, but in reality, you're witnessing an incredibly elegant mass murder. This is the Roses of Heliogabalus by Lawrence Alma-Tadema, painted in 1888. The dark narrative is based on the unhinged Roman emperor Heliogabalus, who decided to prank his party guests by releasing an avalanche of flower petals from a false ceiling. Historia Augusta tells us that tons of heavy roses suffocate the unsuspecting guests under a thick, fragrant blanket. Some are already asphyxiating in their sleep, while the 18-year-old emperor looks on with absolute sociopathic boredom, sipping wine from a golden cup. Alma-Tadema was the undisputed king of classic detail. The cold texture of the carved marble, the subtle shimmer of Roman silks, and the sheer volume and individual petals are rendered with a staggering hyperrealism. The painting plays a brilliant trick on your eyes, forcing a sharp contrast between a beautiful soft pink aesthetic and a horrific claustrophobic execution. And this legendary icon of Victorian decadence is held within a renowned private collection. Alma-Tadema's dedication to this canvas was downright obsessive. He painted this during a freezing British winter in London. Because he refused to paint fake flowers, he ordered fresh roses to be shipped every single week, all the way from the French Riviera. He spent 4 months capturing the exact color of dying, wilting petals under studio light. Talk about a killer work ethic for a killer painting. We shatter the polished glass of academic art and crash headfirst into the exploding energy of Flemish baroque. This is the Satyrs by the legendary Peter Paul Rubens, painted around 1618. The Grandmaster of Motion takes mythological creatures and turns them into raw, unyielding mirror of human vice. There's zero airbrushing here, only primal, untamed energy. Rubens is famous for his flashy, heavy, hyper-expressive figures. The satyr in the foreground stares directly at us with a sly, animalistic grin, squeezing a cluster of ripe grapes, a heavy symbol of wine and unbridled temptation. The satyr behind him looks on with dark, hollow longing. Rubens uses a rich, deeply warm-colored palette and thick, dynamic brushstrokes that make the character feel alive. You can almost feel the heat radiating off their sun-beaten skin and hear their heavy breathing. This is a masterful study in Baroque psychology. Rubens isn't just painting a myth, he's exposing the raw, primal instincts of human nature that civilization tries so hard to hide. And you can find this raw power on display in Munich, Germany, at the Alte Pinakothek Museum. Notice the difference in styles here. Academic art loves things smooth and perfect, but Rubens? No, Rubens is a pure rock and roll. He leaves visible, wet-on-wet brushstrokes to give the skin texture and life. And look at the grin, it's unsettling because he's looking right at you, the viewer, and as if it's inviting you to drop your morals and join the party. It's creepy, it's brilliant, I would say it's a peak Baroque. Now, let's see how French academic art reimagines the exact same satyr theme 200 years later. This is Nymphs and Satyr by William-Adolphe Bouguereau, painted in 1873. The plot revolves around a classical myth, but with a highly unexpected, playful, and comedic twist. The hunter has officially become the hunted. A mischievous satyr was caught spying on the group of bathing nymphs in a secluded forest. Instead of fleeing, the nymphs ambush him and are now forcefully dragging him into a freezing cold lake, which as a land creature he absolutely loathes. Bouguereau's technical skill is breathtaking. The skin of the nymphs looks like soft, glowing porcelain, creating a violent visual contrast with the rough, dark, heavily muscled body of the struggling satyr. The composition is flawlessly balanced, making the chaotic struggle look like an elegant, choreographed dance. Bouguereau creates an image radiating with the pure joy of life, grace, and light eroticism, entirely stripped of vulgarity. To see this legendary game tug of war, you'll have to visit the Clark Art Institute in Williamstown, Massachusetts. Bouguereau was fiercely hated by the Impressionists, actually, who called his style sterile and too perfect, but the public absolutely ate it up. When a wealthy American businessman bought this painting and brought it to New York, it caused a literal stampede at the luxury hotel bar where it was displayed, and people stood in massive lines for hours just to get like a glimpse of these glowing porcelain bodies. It became a 19th century pop culture phenomenon. Next up is an absolute visual nightmare and easily Bouguereau's most aggressive unhinged painting, Dante and Virgil. Inspired by Dante's Dante's Inferno or Divine Comedy, it violently plunges us into the eighth circle of hell, a claustrophobic pit reserved for falsifiers, impersonators, and fraudsters. And we witness a feral, animalistic fight between the heretic Capocchio and Gianni Schicchi, who has gone completely rabid, sinking his teeth into his rival's neck while brutally kneeing his spine. Shrouded in dark cloaks in the background stand Dante and Virgil. The pure horror etched onto Dante's face perfectly mirrors the viewer's own shock. The hellish lighting mimics erratic flashes of demonic fire, casting distorted shadows and carving out the agonizing muscles of nearby damsels. Bouguereau pushes his academic mastery of human anatomy to its absolute, distorted limits to capture the supreme chaos, savagery, and moral decay of the underworld. This hellish masterpiece awaits you in Paris, France, at the Musée d'Orsay. This was a massive statement piece. Early in his career, critics kept dismissing Bouguereau, saying he could only paint soft, pretty, commercial little nymphs. Furious, he painted this absolute heavy metal nightmare just to prove the point. He wanted to scream to the Paris salon, "Look at this anatomy, look at this violence." He proved he could do horror just as well as beauty, and it completely stunned the critics. Leaving the realms of myths and monsters, we crash land into the brutal social reality of the 19th century. This is a masterclass in psychological tension, the Unequal Marriage by Vasily Pukirev, painted in 1862. What we are looking at isn't a celebratory wedding, it's a cold-blooded domestic tragedy. A tear-stained young girl, practically a child, is being forced to marry an elderly, wealthy, high-ranking official. Look at her limp, powerless hand barely holding the wedding candle, and the indifferent, arrogant profile of the groom. Pukirev masterfully handles the lightning. A brilliant ray hits the bride, illuminating her purity and victimhood, while the surrounding crowd of guests fades into dark, decay, and calculating shadows. The painting became a fierce cultural manifesto against the arranged marriages of the convenience. Pukirev captured a quite suffocating trauma, where life is being sold right before our eyes. You can feel this heavy silence in person at the State Tretyakov Gallery. Emotion here is so intense because it was Pukirev's own real-life tragedy. The love of his life, Praskovia Vorontsova, was forced by her family to marry a wealthy old prince for status. Pukirev was utterly devastated. If you look at the far right of the canvas, the man standing with his arms tightly crossed, glaring at the groom. That is a self-portrait of the artist himself, forever protesting the wedding, we remain inside the raw world of critical realism with a painting that became a universal symbol of backbreaking labor and systematic injustice. Ilya Repin's barge haulers on the Volga, completed in 1873. We are confronted by 11 men tightly bound to leather straps, dragging a massive cargo ship against the heavy river current. Repin doesn't just paint poverty, he crafts deep psychological portraits. Each hauler is a distinct soul, from the wise defrocked priest Kanin leading the pack to the defiant young boy Larka, who struggles against his trap. The scorching, relentless sun, the burning sand underfoot, and the endless, indifferent horizon of the river amplify the sheer, suffocating weight of their endless toil. The composition is brilliant, angled so that the men seem to be walking directly towards the viewer, forcing us to look straight into the eyes of the forgotten class. This epic testament to the human endurance is housed at the State Russian Museum. Repin didn't just invent this in a cozy studio, he spent months traveling along the Volga, literally living among real barge haulers, listening to their stories and sketching their faces. When the painting debuted, it caused a massive political scandal. High society was deeply offended that such ugly poverty was shown at the art exhibition, but Repin achieved his goal. He forced the elite to look at the human engines powering their luxury. And for the grand finale of our video, a colossal sweeping historical allegory. This is the consummation of empire, the central crowning jewel of Thomas Cole's legendary 5-part series The Course of Empire, painted in 1836. The founder of the Hudson River School envisions a fictional ancient global superpower at the absolute peak of its civilization. Before us is a blinding display of pure decadence, towering marble columns, golden statues gleaming under a perfect sky, and triumphant imperial processing crossing a massive bridge. Cole uses a radiant, hyper-saturated color palette to dazzle the viewer, but look closer. Beneath this glorious golden veneer lies a warning. The society has abandoned its virtues, drowning in unchecked hubris, greed, and imperial vanity. This masterpiece serves as a timeless, prophetic warning. When an empire reaches its absolute peak of greed and arrogance, it unknowingly takes its very first step towards total collapse. This breathtaking vision of historical cycles can be found in New York City at the New York Historical Society. What makes Cole's series so legendary is what happens next. The very next painting in the cycle is titled Destruction, showing this exact same city but being burned to the ground by invaders, and then it's followed by Desolation, just ruins into nature. Cole wanted to warn a young America that no superpower is invincible. Art always records either the peak of human ambition or its devastating fall. Well, that's it. 13 paintings that somehow made me feel alive and hopefully made you feel just a little bit more numb to reality. If you actually made it to this point of the video, I'm honestly shocked. You either have a deeply refined taste in existential dread or you just fell asleep with the autoplay on. But take care of yourselves. Try not to drown in a wave of roses or end up in the 8th circle of hell. So, bye.